How are you, everybody? You're most welcome again. How are you, Mahmood? Fine? MashaAllah. You have acquired a new look of, grace and wisdom and piety, huh? Something must have happened. MashaAllah. How are you?
Okay.
Fine?
Yeah.
Good, good. And what about your treatment? Have you been pursuing it?
I have been pursuing it.
Good, mashallah. To any known positive effect?
Swollen joints. Swollen joints.
I think there is an overall general improvement. So continue to use it.
I'm continuing.
without me.
Just got a new supply.
Shall we start, please?
Tariq is going to ask the first. Yes, please.
Tariq, how are you? Tell me, what's your question?
So in pre-Islamic Arabia, Arabs had Islamic names.
Did they have?
Well, as far
I
as I
think
can
it
gather.
was in the post-Islamic era that the Muslims had Arab names.
Did they?
Yes. It's the other way around.
I've read of people being called
Whatever
Abdullah.
names were found in pre-Islamic era which had no sense of idolatry about them were never changed. So there is nothing in names. As long as they do not relate to any idea of idolatry, it is not necessary that the names should be changed to Islamic names. But religions have employed this change of name to their advantage for gaining unsuspecting commoners to their faith by just changing their names. A large number of Africans were converted to Christianity just using this method of changing their names at the school registration time. And they grew with those names which later on they realized were Christian names, so they considered themselves to be Christians, while they were born either Muslims or pagans. So that is one significance of the change of name, but otherwise it doesn't make any difference. Right?
Right.
Please?
Hazur, I've got a very, very good friend and neighbour, but he does not believe in life after death.
That's
And
right.
what I would like to ask you, please, is how can I really convince him to change his mind?
On this subject, no sharp, crisp, small answer can ever satisfy anyone.
No.
It's impossible. It's the whole philosophy of life after death which has to be explained.
Yes.
You see, remove that philosophy from human affairs of the wisdom of life after death. I mean, philosophy of the wisdom of life after death, and the wisdom will vanish from human affairs, because sense of responsibility is entirely dependent on a sense of accountability. And if there is no life after death, there is no accountability. You can run away with any crime. You can cause suffering to the whole mankind if you occupy a position of power in the world affairs. Yet the moment you die, you return to peace of unawareness. This is one scheme of things. The other is that you simply cannot run away from whatever you have done. You must face the consequences. Reward and punishment both. They will not end with your life here, they will continue into the next. This is the only wise philosophy to which man should adhere. Otherwise, justice, fair play and honesty, loyalty would all disappear from human affairs. And whether there is a hell after death or not, there will be hell here on earth, which will create ourselves. That is why the Holy Quran pays such emphasis on the issue of life after death, that repeatedly when it mentions other religions, the followers of other religions, it says that they are safe, they have nothing to fear, as long as they believe and perform righteous deeds according to their belief, and also believe in the hereafter. The hereafter is never omitted from this. The most essential condition is that your conduct here on earth is shaped by your belief in hereafter. Only then it could be considered a righteous act. Otherwise, it will lose meaning. It may be just a display or, ostentatiousness on your part. Otherwise, such acts of goodness are such merely hollow, which are not supported with belief in accountability. So this is, in short, what I can suggest to you, the line you should take with him. Why should anyone be honest at all? Because then honesty is just sheer stupidity. You are given a chance in this life, and that is all. And once you lose consciousness, you lose everything. So why not enjoy with whatever you can, That is, morality becomes madness then. Morality becomes wisdom only with relation to life after death. Right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullah.
Hazur, in the billions of stars and millions of planets, are we alone in the universe?
We are not alone, because the creator of the millions and billions of stars and planets is always with us. It is through him and through him alone that we can gain a sort of communication with everything else which is in the world, or whichever was in the universe. So a sense of continuity in time and expansion in space can only be gained through our communication with God, the Creator. Then the rest becomes unimportant, small things. If other forms exist or do not, what do we have to do with them? If we have established our relationship with the Creator, and through Him in the life after death, we can gain our knowledge continuously of what there was we left behind. Somebody may say that it will be too late. What is it to us after we die? What we have left behind? But this is wrong. Acquisitiveness for knowledge is a source of pleasure in itself. So that is why we are not satisfied with the knowledge of the present alone. We continue to delve deeper and deeper into our past, what we were, where we came from, and the study of old civilizations and cultures all makes a part of our urge to know not only the present but also the past. So in a remote future, if we know more of our past and what happened down below and how God managed things, that would add pleasure to our happiness in our, add pleasure to our heaven or paradise. When I say add pleasure, I really mean it, because knowledge is pleasure in fact. And knowledge in a form of existence which is not material and not sensual becomes more intensified pleasure. So I'm sure, many times while contemplating on these things, I pray to Allah, that all right, after death let me know what was happening in the galaxies and stars and things. All the mysteries which man can never unfathom, because man is only a shortly lived animal in space. Right? Thank you.
The lives of the holy prophets were predestined by God. Is this also the case with ordinary people?
What was the second part of your question?
Is it also the case, are our lives also predestined?
What do you mean by predestined?
For instance, when you're born, is it all
You see,
from the day you're
everything
born till the day you die? Is that already?
Yes, everything in a way is predestined, yet everything in another way is not predestined. Because what we make out of our potentials plays a very important causative role in shaping our destiny. So it's a very complex matter, you know. You can't just announce that predestiny must have designed Hazrat Rasulullah Sallam and all that he did. If that was all, then all the good people in the world, whether they are prophets or not, all the bad people in the world, whether they are Satans or not, they do not deserve either reward or punishment. Because a total predestiny absolutely rules out the justice of reward and punishment. See? So, destiny is a complex affair which is a product of an interplay of certain predestined things with the freedom of the freedom of the humans to shape their own lives and to make choices. That, you know, put together makes the destiny. It can only be referred to as predestiny in the form that it was in the knowledge of God. It would happen so. But the knowledge was not the causative factor. The pre-knowledge was because it had to happen like that. So if it were a causative factor, then it would become predestiny in the sense you are referring to, right?
Yes.
So in that way, of course, whatever happened in the time of Hazrat Rasulullah Sallam and whatever happened in the time of Masih Maud and whatever will happen will be a sort of destiny, part of which will be predestined. But part of that will be destined with the interplay of our actions and decisions with the choices we are given and the way we behave here. That will be the part of destiny which is in the knowledge of God but not shaped as such by God, as a fixed something. Got it? But there is another part to destiny which can positively be declared as predestiny in human affairs, where the Holy Quran says, لَأَغْلِبَنَّ كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَأَغْلِبَنَّ أَنَا وَرُسُلِي. God has written it. When the Holy Quran says written it, it means none can change. This is a law of destiny. That he and his prophets will certainly emerge dominant, whether through the destruction of their enemies or their gain of greater following. Either way, they will be dominant. Now this is a predestiny. None can change it. It acted at the time of Noah. It acted at the time of Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam. So will it be operative at the time of Ahmadiyyat, because there is no exception in that. That is predestined. So, which means that a few certain things which make the complexion of an age, which we think happen accidentally, do not happen accidentally. The laws of nature are so organized and directed by God to produce certain things and situations which would be helpful for the ultimate realization of their destiny. So in that way, MTA, I believe, makes a part of it. Television was invented and everything was done as though just by chances of discovery. But when you find it written in the New Testament as well as in a prophecy of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu that a time would come when electric rays or radiations will be used to convey messages of truth and people will see each other across, then that indicates that this was not accidental. And it had to be a part of that predestiny, that this will be used to assist the final Islamic phase of struggle for domination over the rest of the world. And this MTA is predestined in that sense, right? And also I can bear witness myself, the way we entered into it, appeared in the beginning as if a few chances were happening to collude with each other, unconsciously of course, but to collude with each other to lead us into this. But when you look back at the whole course through which you have come, it's impossible for hundreds of chances to always fall in right steps to produce the result that we are now witnessing ourselves with the grace of Allah. So it is a predestiny, there is no shadow of doubt about it. Right?
Yes, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you
Fine,
very
good.
much. Yes.
Out of all the Hartlepoolians, I think you have the most effervescent personality. Is that right or wrong? His mother also had the same. Really. Bubbling with life and things. Please.
I wonder if you could help me to explain to non-believers who ask me about the horrendous murder of children in Dunblane earlier this year. These people are quick to criticize God for allowing such things to happen. So how do I explain, please?
Horrendous what?
Dunblane, children's murder in Dunblane.
On that, I understand, but on that I have already spoken at length in this very session previously. Not in this, but I mean in the series of this session, in one of the sittings.
I don't have MTA at the moment.
But only briefly I'll tell you that what happened there is not an accident. It is the lack of sensibility of the British people to certain crimes they have been committing and promoting those crimes to be committed by negligence, by shutting their eyes to them in the name of liberty. So this had to result in this over permissiveness, this over tolerance of misbehavior and conduct and disloyalty of partners to each other, and overemphasis on worldly pleasures, whatever way you get them. All these are the factors which will create such incidents. If not here, in France or in Germany, recently, a similar, horrid incident took place. Where was that?
Australia.
In Australia, that's right. So this is a reflection on our own conduct and our attitude to human problems. Now that man, who is supposed to be a madman, but I don't believe was a mad person at all, because madmen, even madmen, don't kill children like that and specifically make them their targets. It is a vengeful person who is the creation of neglect of society and who is the creation of some mistreatment meted to him during his early childhood. A man who was burning in the sense of vengeance and boiling it up with that, So the sort of madness he suffered from ultimately was surfacing of his suppressed emotions of revenge and of sort of sadistic tendency in him to hurt others, to feel sort of revenged or avenged. That is a psychological situation which actually turns into a sort of madness where you lose balances completely, where the right and wrong totally disappear. Only your own personality and what you must do to satisfy the inner urge of that personality is what remains as its truth. I mean, they have their own concept of truth, What remains to be the ultimate truth to these mad people. They live for it and they can offer their personal sacrifice to gain that. So that is why I said truth, because you can't sacrifice for falsehood. But there are inner truths, twisted truths as well, which are referred to as truths as from the vantage point only of such mad people. So he believed in it. He had a right to do it. The society owed it to him. So it was not a case of just an ordinary madman we are dealing with. It's a case of the madness of the whole society in dealing with such issues and not penetrating deep enough into the causes why such uglinesses are created from time to time in advanced societies. It happened in America many a time, like Australia. It happened in America many a time, even in a worse way. But the society thinks that it's a matter of the past, buried, finished, only shed a few tears and make some joint prayers, and that's all there is to it. Mass scale suicides are committed, burning alive of hundreds of innocent people under the spell of a crooked man has been registered in America many a time before. So we must go deeper, and whatever you try, whatever the means of investigation you employ, you can only succeed if you make a resolution to stick to absolute justice, not to be carried away by your own personal intentions and your national aspirations, etc. If you stick only to truth and find out the reasons why it is happening to us, then the whole pattern of life here, including the media, the usage and all the different pursuits of pleasure, etc., will come under censure, of course. Then a new plan of life will have to be suggested. People will say it's too orthodox, too, sort of, what the word which I'm searching for is perhaps obsolete thinking. You're talking of old age. We have emerged into a new era. So if you have emerged into a new era, also realize that you have to cope with the new darknesses which are a part of the new era. New nights will be brought in by the days which you believe to be days. And the days also will lose their light and become sheer darkness and ugliness in the end. This is what you are suffering from already. You don't realize it. The society is becoming more and more restless with the passage of time. There is restlessness everywhere, and the political change in political system is not the answer. The edifice of British society is crumbling down right from top to bottom. The royalty is no more the same highly venerable, respectable institution. which provided you a canopy of sense of a shade, a cool shade of something under which you can prosper better than than the other nations of the world. It was a very beautiful equation between the democracy and monarchy, which was unique in the British system. No longer so. It is already shattered. And the politics has become corrupt. A thing which you could never even remotely imagine of or conceive of the British people. Politics has been wrong, of course, in the past, as it always is everywhere in the world, occasionally I mean. But in England, in the British history, politics has not been corrupt. It has become now. And the people at the highest echelon of society, everywhere, have become corrupt in every connotation of the word corruption. In moral lacks moral attitude, in selfishness, in the quality of truth, in everything which is conceived good. The British standards are lowering, are close to be grounded on earth. And nobody realizes it. They think that a political change from the conservative to the Labour will do magic works. It's impossible. They're the same people. Systems cannot be the systems cannot be pivotal to a revolution in the affairs of a people if the people, if the officers or persons responsible for operating the systems remain the same and the fault lies with them. This is a question which must be clearly understood. Yesterday, a political leader from Pakistan spent about half an hour with me, and this was his question. What can we do about Pakistan now? What new system can usher in an era of trust and peace and justice? I said, none. No question of that. Systems are not responsible. It is those who run the system, who operate the system, who are responsible. So, if they are the same everywhere, whichever system they bring, still they will not be able to bring about any happy, welcome change. Like in Russia, what failed was not the system. What failed was those who operated the system there. And still, in the name of communism, if there is a new revolution, it will suffer the same fate. People, once they become immoral and once they lose the awareness of accountability, that is the same question which you refer. There is no going back then. It's always continuous downhill task, a downhill journey, I mean. So you better create an awareness to these things. Whenever political leaders from England come to meet me, I always remind them of this, and they always part fully in full agreement. Just this is true. But at the same time, I can read no sign of hopes on their faces, because they know it's beyond them to bring about a change, even if a realization is born. See, the cheapness of worldly pleasures is an addiction. And once you are addicted to these things, knowing the worst or dangerous consequences, you simply cannot dissociate with them. This is the philosophy which Ghalib, explained in one of his most beautiful verses. That is the reason why I love Ghalib most, because he is a poet of human psychology. And in one couplet, he speaks of such profound wisdoms which play a real vital role in human affairs. He says, जानता हूँ सवाब ताअत व ज़ुहद, पर तबीयत इधर नहीं आती. So I know full well the advantages of goodness and piety, but my heart does not permit me to do that. What can I do? You see? But it's a question of a diseased heart here now, unfortunately. Please, next, your turn.
I have a question which is very related to this thing, Huzur, that in the youngster of this country, it's very difficult. They are very addicted to these worldly players, alcohol and sports and televisions. How one can stimulate them or coerce them or excite them?
This is the problem. You can't.
I'm
Because
talking-
they are playing in the hands of powerful mafias. New mafias are being created, music mafia, and they all play in the hands of devil itself, because there is no moral inhibition which prevents them from introducing things which they know will be destructive for morality. No such inhibition. The only consideration is how to earn money and more money. So you play havoc with the tastes of the people, and this is exactly what I have been telling the German people during our question answer sessions there. Whenever they raise questions about music, etc., I said there were days when, despite the fact I am not very much sold to the Western style of music, I have not been brought up like that, but yet I know during my student days here that once or twice when I had time to listen to the musical displays in Albert Hall, I was deeply impressed by the quality and potential of that music to bring about the very noblest in you. It was not just an excitement which they created, the performances of great classical masters. It was not just a stir of some sort. They brought peace with the instrument of agitation. This was their masterly art. They agitated your souls, and in music there is always agitation of some sort. But the rhythm, when it coincides with the inner rhythm of soul, then this agitation always brings peace. It's a sort of vibration of human soul, which is caused by music, which is in perfect harmony with what the soul desires. So unanswered questions without words can be answered by the influence of that music, that classical music. So they were noble people, who created those things. But now look at the pop music. Look at what it does to your society. It brings about the worst. The cheap urge for pleasure and excitement. Excitement is something else, and this organized vibration of the soul is quite a different thing altogether. Again, what can you do about it? People used to, these tutis, pressed into the ears and always listening, dancing with music. They lose sense of the basic realities of life. Lose touch with the basic realities of life. They're carried away in an artificial, atmosphere of pleasure within themselves, and for that they can even murder others to get new, what they call new records, albums, yes. To get these new albums, they could commit crimes. So I wonder if ever it had happened before in the way of in relation to classical music, that anyone mugged in the streets or committed crime or burglaries, etc., for the sake of gaining a few records or Beethoven, etc. They just don't go together. They always created nobility and assisted nobility in man. The modern trends are following a counter direction. This is the problem. You can't do anything. No one can. Mafias have taken over all over the world. There is drug mafia, there is music mafia, there is nowadays video mafia, and I can't recount all the things, but I know everything has got organized in the form of some capitalist concentration in fewer hands, and the ultimate objective is only to support that mafia-like hold on money. It's money and those hands, that's all. Morality, human affairs, goodness, they simply vanish from their computations, right?
I asked this question in connection with Tabligh. We find people over 40, they get fed up with these things. They're tired of, they know by that age that these were useless.
Of course.
But the young people, it's very difficult.
But that awareness can only be turned into advantage for preaching if they believe in God, not otherwise. If they believe in God and accountability, as I have just suggested already, then of course you can use this potential in them to be converted into belief and faith, not otherwise. So you have to work some more on them to make them convinced of the existence of God and the life after death. Then of course if they are fed up with this life, they will be readily come to you, because that will be the only place where they can find peace in that case.
That's exactly the problem is with the youngsters. Yeah.
But among the youngsters also, there are many who are not yet a part of this system. They are watching from the sidelines, and they are not giving voice to their dissatisfaction, although deep within they are not happy with this. So you should search for those right-minded people. The society is never rid of such things, such goodness, altogether I mean. In every class there are some good people, rightly inclined, and they would be the right right people, right soil for you to try to sow the seed of truth. Please.
You only had one question.
Mahmood? Okay. Yes.
I was listening to the discussions in the Tabligh committee this morning with great interest, but one thing that struck me was has the signature on the Bait form become the be-all and end-all of Tabligh? Should we be going for quality rather than quantity?
You see, that's not the end-all, that's the beginning of everything. There is no end-all in religion at all. The only end is declared, is pronounced at the time of death. But that is not the end all for soul anyway. That is the announcement of another beginning. Ba'ath form is just a promise that I'll try to gain the best out of this system I'm joining, and I'll cooperate with the system to promote goodness. That in a sense is the meaning of Ba'ath form, and the signature is not in any way a legal compulsion imposed on anybody. Everybody is free to walk in and walk out, to fulfill the promise partially or completely, or not to fulfill it partially or completely. So it all depends on the attitude of the person who signs the Ba'ath form and the spirit with which he signs the Ba'ath form. Sometimes do it with good intentions, of course, I know, with sincerity, but they're carried away by the pulls of the society, the gravitation of the society around. So it's a constant struggle. In no way can you call it an end all. Please.
Partly answered my second question is, I wondered if there was any evidence that non-Ahmadi Muslims are watching MTA, and is it having an effect, especially in Pakistan, on the way that they're treating Ahmadis?
See, we are hearing reports from everywhere in the world that more and more non-Ahmadis and also Christians and people belonging to other faiths are getting interested in MTA. I was most pleasantly surprised to witness this in Germany, when after the conclusion of our question answer session with Germans, the Amirs have told me that there is a delegation from a school which wants to present me with some token of their gratitude to MTA. I was amazed. I said, what do you mean? It's a Christian school, of course, a school, ordinary secular school, but mostly the Christians are the students there. Now there were some Ahmadi students who were studying in that school who introduced MTA to their staff and the children. And once they began to see it, watch it, they were absolutely overwhelmed with the goodness it is creating or attempting to create. So that was the recognition of this fact which promoted them to award me with this sort of trophy which they had themselves designed. And I have got it with me. I have given it to the MTA people for their safekeeping, in which that staff, non-Ahmadi staff, imagine, of Germans, they created a sort of beautiful image made by their artists, in which the words MTA were used not as initials but as full, above and below that symbol. Above it said Mirza Tahir Ahmad, and below it said Muslim Television Ahmadiyya. So they combined the both possible significances, and there was, of course, some beautiful artistic expressions, not in words but in figures and style and drawings. So the head teacher came himself to, along with his staff, to deliver this appreciation, a token of appreciation from Russian, East European countries. We keep hearing from people, and there are some who have become Ahmadis entirely because of MTA. Not entirely in the sense that God didn't have any role to play, of course not, but I mean to say they were good people, so God made MTA instrumental to bring them to Ahmadiyya. One scholar from Austria, he is an outstanding example of this. We wanted to have scholars from Austria to translate our literature, etc., into Austrian language, and we had made some translations, but they were not adequate. So we wanted someone really high, level of knowledge and intellect. One day we received a telephone call, and then which was followed by a letter addressed to me by a scholar who has excellent command over English. Seldom I have seen people write such good English from belonging to Austria. And the story he told was that he was a Catholic. I don't remember exactly whether it was written in the letter or mentioned in some telephone call, but the impression I receive is that previously he was a Catholic, certainly not a Muslim. And because I draw this inference because he mentioned that he regularly watched the programs of Pope and wanted to benefit from that. One day he wrote, accidentally he turned on the knob, to find something better or different, and there was MTA. And I was sitting with some people, answering their questions and talking to them casually. So he said, immediately I compared you with the Pope. And immediately I realized why I was not fully satisfied with the Pope at all. Not fully, he said, why I was not satisfied with the performance of Pope or any other such leader, because he said, I never recognized the true dedication and truth and modesty among them. They were ostentatious. They always kept their distance from their followers, as if they are placed at a higher order of, a higher platform, and the rest were below and far below them. He said, if they could not, the commoners could not communicate with these religious leaders, how could they communicate with God? So these were the issues which were intriguing his mind perhaps. We briefly mentioned them and said, but when I saw you talking to your people, I was amazed that you were one of them, yet you stood above. And their attitude also reflected exactly the same thing. There was no distance as far as the equality of man and accessibility to God where every man is concerned. That is the impression I received. I mean, he says. And yet I could see that those to whom you were talking to them as one of them, yet there was something which made a difference. And when I looked at them, they also felt at ease with you, completely freely communicating, yet a difference was observed. I was amazed at his intelligence, the way he is. And that one single experience made him decide to become Ahmadi. Imagine. He said, I have no doubt left. I know that I can depend my own impressions or conclusions which I draw from observations, and I know this is truth. There is no question of any other debate on the academic issues. But he required that we should send him some literature as well. See, had not read a word of literature speaking of discussing dogma and theories, etc., etc. But he became an Ahmadi. When I wrote back to him, the answer I received further assured me that this man was a genuine Ahmadi and had become a permanent fixture in Ahmadiyya. Ever since I have done, he wrote, he has done the Bayat, or joined you. Before he didn't know what Bayat was. He said, I feel that I have ultimately reached where I should have always belonged. A complete unison between my desires and what I couldn't specifically point at, that this is what I want. But within me there was a craving for something which I always wanted to be. This is only fulfilled when I have become Ahmadi. So there is no, no more disturbance or dissatisfaction about one's goals in life. He says, I feel at home. And he's serving the cause immediately. He started serving the cause by translating literature into Australian language and Austrian language and so on. So this is again a fruit of MTA. We receive letters from Arabs, and not letters only, they are very soon followed by bad forms, or inquiries as to how they should become Ahmadis. And they complain of not contacting the Arab, complaint against Ahmadiyya, not contacting the Arab world before. So where were you? So I always respond by reminding them that ask your rulers where we were, or ask your mullahs where we were. We were always there knocking at your door, but they would prevent reaching this knocking sound your ears, and wouldn't permit us to reach you anyway. Now God has opened this. So again, this is a sign of destiny. It had to be predestined. In Pakistan, the same thing is happening. Only the problem there is that again the people are getting addicted to profanity through television. The worst that television can offer has reached their homes through satellite television system, and it's very difficult to dissociate, to break their ties with that. I have heard of people, families who sit all night long, along with their children as well, watching Indian television, which is just a filthy display of the basic human sensual pursuits. And they are becoming more and more naked with the passage of time, imitating the West, but in a crude way, with no sophistications. And the songs are cheap, and the literary quality of their dialogues is just nauseating. And yet the people of Pakistan are getting addicted to this. So that is the problem. But on the other hand, there is also a ray of hope that the new satellite which we have now employed to our service is farthest removed from these cheap channels. But on the same satellite, they have started showing the there were some very interesting educative programs about nature and life, how it is made, things in which there is still a section of Pakistani society which is interested. So I received letters from Karachi and other cities of Pakistan that there is a decent class of Pakistanis who do not approve of the Indian style entertainment and who are always watching these programs. Kya naam hai uska? On the satellite, it is something like you always come across occasionally now in British television like the programs of that bearded scientist. Huh?
Islam and science.
Huh? Yes, that's right. And he's a very interesting person, and he creates more interest in the subjects he pursues by adding his own personality in it. So these sorts of programs are now being displayed in Pakistan through the same satellite system which we have employed. So a large number of sets, not very large but still sizable number of satellite dishes are now directed towards the same, and they see our programs as well, because just two of us are there. So we are catering for the taste now of people who are closer to us, and I hope inshallah that will bring about some big change. But at the same time, even in the previous system, we continue to gain people from different walks of life to Ahmadiyyat. Like one Pakistani ex-general, lieutenant general, man of his status, wrote to me that he was retired only, just a short time before he wrote the letter to me, that he happened to visit an Ahmadi whom he knew, who was watching a television called MTA, and there you were addressing the people in a sermon or something. So he said, I had absolutely no knowledge of Ahmadiyyat. If at all, it was a negative information which had created a sense of repulsion in me. But as I watched, I was fascinated, I was mesmerized, I kept watching, and the most important thing which impressed me was the truth. I could disbelieve my ears but could not disbelieve my eyes. I saw truth and nothing but truth. So please count me among those who, even if they are not Ahmadis, who belong to you. You know, that sort of message. Very decent letter was received by me. It was about 6 months or a year ago. So I don't remember exactly the name, and I shouldn't reveal the name anyway. But they are reassuring things which happen. And the mullahs sometimes write that they were committed enemies of Ahmadiyyat until, out of curiosity, they made the blunder they thought of watching MTA. And the whole resistance against Ahmadiyyat collapsed. And then they started contemplating the idea of becoming Ahmadis. So some wrote in that state, and some wrote after they had become Ahmadis. And some who had written before followed it up by informing me now they have become Ahmadis. It's happening in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and in so many other places of the world, in Arab world. So with the grace of Allah, it is the benefit we are drawing from this system is increasing with the passage of time. Anything else?
Is it possible to be a righteous person and be an atheist?
A righteous person and atheist is not possible. It's possible to be rightly inclined and to be an atheist, yes. It is possible not to be mischievous and yet be an atheist. But it is not possible to be righteous and yet be an atheist. Because righteousness is a concept which is much wider and profounder, in which the quality of truth is always related with the belief in God. And as such, it is nobler, it is eternal. Changing circumstances cannot adversely affect this commitment of the person to truth and goodness. But any goodness which is unrelated to God is superficial and temporary and untrustworthy. It can happen only in two types of persons. Those who by nature, as they have been brought up, are incapable of committing crime. So it is like a eunuch playing holy, you know, while he can't do anything anyway. So they are temperamentally incapable of deviating from the path of common decency. They have been brought up in such atmospheres, but when tried, will they do it at this, you know, really tried? That is the question. It is godly people who withstand the pressures of trial when it comes. The ordinary people who believe who have a goodly behavior do not pass this test. At the time of trial, they always collapse. Then when they serve in their political area or economic area, apparently they are very good, decent people, but they are very likely to succumb to the pressures of dishonesty in the fields of their profession. So it's not impossible for them to have this duality of character within them. But the godly people are those whose qualities come to stay. They may not live, but the qualities will live. This is the essence of the character of godly people. The martyrdom, the story of martyrdom, which ran into thousands of people at the time of Muhammad Rasulullah, not during his period, but during the following period as well, is a proof and evidence in favor of what I am telling you. The question before them was to succumb to the outside pressure, to revert to the old system of belief, etc., or lose their lives. So they lost their lives. So values became more important than lives. If this becomes, then this is an evidence of truth itself, and then this is what I said, lasting. The values will survive, whether you can survive or not, it's immaterial. This can't be this can't happen in case of that sort of goodly behavior which you notice among the atheist people. They're gentlemen and ladies all right, but as long as they not pass the test of trial, nothing can be said about them. Right? So I think it's time now. Huh? Over?
Yes.
I'm glad to spend this time with you. I'm always glad, to spend this time with you. I welcome the time when you will come. So whenever you come, during any occasion, Jamaati function, etc., do find time. If it's not Sunday, we can organize a meeting with them on other days as well, because MTA now is asked for 24 hours. That is the beauty of that confidence. We do not serve time, time serves us now. Right? Assalamu alaikum.